My name is Robert Frederick, and thank you for watching. This is History Thesis, where I talk all things history. Particularly today, we are talking about book review, The American Revolution: A History by Gordon S. Wood. He wrote another book that, as far as I can tell, is very similar to the contents of this one. Now, this one is a really good, concise work on the American Revolution. But how does this work out in the scheme of historical scholarship? Well, this book, I would say, is not anything necessarily profound and new within the resources that it uses, any of the primary sources that it goes to, as much as it is it takes a interesting take, an interpretation of historic events that is, well, reasonable. This book really brings attention to a period that initiates the end of classism to a certain degree, and brings up a lot of the political struggle within America to understand its role and how it's going to function and work and secure liberty going forward. It opens the pathway to the end of slavery. I would classify this book more of a socio-political historical work. He mentions a lot about the intellectual thought in the period. So it is a revolutionary period, a revolutionary time, a revolutionary thought. This revolution of really ideology and the way that people thought about things, that was spurred on by the revolutionary events. So we're talking about the authority from overseas with the king and the monarchy, the struggles within Parliament to regulate and understand the needs and represent the American colonies, as well as these ideas of freedom, and looking at works of Thomas Paine and works of David Hume. And he doesn't go into much detail on any of that, but it's a really good, as I said, overview of the subject. The thing that I thought was pretty insightful and new in this book is the, how should we put this? The birth of America really comes as a revolution in political thought, that people have come to this level of knowing, this level of understanding, this level of self-government, that they want to break away from this system of monarchy and that was beginning to feel a bit more tyrannical. And so this was revolutionary for its time, as well as leading to a actual revolution. Gordon is really insightful in bringing out the inner workings of how those two kind of interplay of ideas evolved into what became America. And then we have this evolution of the Republic, and with the Articles of Confederation being brought into question, which is where he concludes the book. He goes over this period where the early period of America, because he's really bringing out this this evolution of a new public within the socio-political world of the Enlightenment. So understanding that aspect of that book, I think it was a brilliant work. The things that I didn't really like about it, well, one, it is a really nice light read. So I really like that. He's arguing that people that make this judgment about this kind of like failure to liberate, African Americans in American society, is one of the big failings of the American Revolution, which he kind of argues against. He's just like, look, that's not where society was at. He doesn't spend much time going into that. And we have to understand, we have to give autonomy to the time. It was the way it was because it's still growing and changing. The revolution the civil rights revolution in the 60s in America happened at that time where it had reached this apex in society that it took place. And it was trying to solve all these issues that, had been arising over time. So you have to understand that there's this whole hierarchical society that is happening in the colonial times, that these people were subjects, were servants to the empire. And even within that system, there were indentured servants and slaves. And that was the workforce of the time. So he makes remarks about, this refers to, the white males. And it's just like, well, it's kind of a non sequitur at the time. I mean, you think about it, like America was found by, Northern Europeans mostly. I mean, I don't know where you classify Spain and all of that, but I mean, for the most part, like, it was the white European countries, and the men were the ones that dominated the political world. And that is just kind of the evolution of society at the time. You can't really, accuse that period of anything because, it's almost unaware of that at the time. Again, that goes back to this idea of the autonomy of history, of the past. So, there's a few remarks here and there, and, you just can't get away from it in scholarship at this point because, ever since the 60s, we've decided that everything's racist, and therefore we look at society that is racist. We look at the past that is racist. And if we can't find it, I mean, if it's not apparent, then we dig till we find it. And I don't think that's good scholarship. Aside from that, I think it was a brilliant book. I mean, it's a really great introduction. I would use this more on a ideological history, because it deals more with ideology or maybe even a philosophy of a evolution in philosophical thought and political thought. And that's really, I think, how this book should be taken. This book is really a more of a political evolution, a history of the political world in the Revolutionary period. And as far as I understand, that's where I study. That's intellectual thought. History of intellectual thought is something that I'm really interested in. And that, I think, it really colors the way that it gives us that understanding that once we understand how people are thinking, we can better understand what was going on in the period. Far too often we spend more time talking about how we think and then color the past accordingly. So anyways, good book. I recommend it, especially if you need a book for the American Revolution. Get this one. Very insightful in its approach to that period. Aside from that, I've got about 20 other books in America that I will be reviewing. So stay tuned. Peace out.